movie. It's actually really good. It's called The Longest Day. It's about 4 or 5 hours long. It's a really long movie, and it's not as gritty or realistic as Saving Private Ryan or the modern type dramas, but most of what you find in there is historically accurate. Okay, which I'm a sucker for his historical dramas that are accurate. I just love that stuff. Yeah, D-Day. The last time I think where we could actually say hand on heart, we could say we knew what we were fighting for.
Yeah.
We knew it, right? I mean, okay, so we might not have known everything, but in the aftermath, it became fairly clear that what happened, or what had happened, or the plans, and we spent some time on the shiny side out to looking at the ideology behind the National Socialist movement in Germany, which is fascinating to no end, right? And in fact, I'm still putting the timeline together for the aftermath, and especially Mr. Hans Kammler and what happened to him and the Bell and a whole bunch of other stuff, Operation High Jump. That'll be a show where we're going to go through the timeline and we're going to highlight to you what happened there. But that's probably for the shiny side out. Here, though, Dave, I tell you what. Okay, so it is D-Day. Another war, of course, is going on at the moment in the Ukraine, in the Sudan as well. There's skirmishes everywhere, here, there, and everywhere. But we now saw the world on fire yet again, Dave.
Did you know that all of those fires in Quebec started simultaneously?
Yeah, there's
simultaneously and
highlight.
were visible on the weather radar as smoke plumes.
Oh, of course.
But they weren't there the previous day, and it's spread over like 1,000 kilometers.
Yeah. They were started by, most of these fires are arson. That's where we are. So they're not naturally started fires. Having said that, now people talk about climate change, isn't it the world on fire, as we saw here as well in Australia. But Canada is now meant to have the worst wildfire season on record, right? Now, did climate change cause all those fires? No, it did not. People did mostly, but climate change, or what we're experiencing in the conditions that we call climate, are aiding and abetting the effort of those arsons, because it is dry, it is hot, a lot of tinder and undergrowth, and it just goes up, and it's just terrible. But yeah, they all started almost simultaneously, as though there were an effort undertaken, which is now leading, interestingly enough, to millions of people in the northern United States, like the northern states, all the way from Seattle to New York, to mask up, because the air is getting almost it's becoming unbreathable. That's not good for anyone. And I don't know. Have you had any other theories around the simultaneous starting of the fires?
I've sent you a clip, and I don't know if it's the starting bit, but I think at 5 minutes and 24, he goes backwards and forwards on the weather radar, showing they all start at once, like it's a coordinated effort. Or if you're into the theory of directed energy weapons, is it directed energy weapons? It's a good question. Not saying it is. And Meki isn't saying that all the fires are started by arson. I'm sure there's a mix of natural events. In this case, there weren't any storms, and it just became morning, and then suddenly they were all alight. So
if you look at the pictures, Dave, they look like Sydney back in the day.
Yeah, I know all the pictures of the orange glow, thick, dense atmosphere, smoke-ridden. Yeah, look, we went through all those in 2019, and for months we were going through those, and that was awful, and the loss of life. But we've got pine trees here. Those fires are unstoppable, just like ours. Ours have a gas fuel trapped in the leaves, and that makes it even more unstoppable. And this isn't a competition, mind you. And I don't
Everything is competition. Everything is a competition.
Damn, I hope they don't win. So, no, my point is that was a really good call out about them all starting simultaneously, and as that call was being made, I started to think about it maybe a little differently. Because remember here, in the cleared area where there were no more animals, there was no Greenpeace to say you couldn't start developing the land. Since there's no animals anymore, those frogs, you don't have to worry about them. That creek, well, it's dry now. Right? Those koalas, don't have to worry about them. Yeah, that was the only place they were at.
Oh, finally, the danger of drop bears averted. Whew, we can enjoy nature again. Hurrah!
We can go and enjoy it. The venomous creatures there, nothing was now any problem. And so some of the land that was burnt through, I mean, below the ground burnt too, was sold to developers under the prior New South Wales government after the fires. So they could develop it. They went, well, cool, great opportunity. So it does beg the question, were any of those intentional? Was the delay of action, or you just intentional let them burn out? Don't do anything about it. Don't send planes in with water and fire retardant. No, that's bad. We'll just let it burn. We'll let it burn. Look, it's probably a good that we let it burn, but these were totally the fires we had were totally from top of canopy to the ground fires. Normally a fire can burn through Australian bushland, with 30-meter tall gum trees, either at the ground level or ground and mid-level. And canopy fires are very, very rare. But if they are canopy fires, they'll run through the canopy without touching the ground or the mid-levels. So you don't get all of them for the whole stack to get burnt all at once. And I think that's got to be noted, right? Pine forest have a foot or two of pine needles on the ground, which actually, believe it or not, prevents other plants from growing. Not because it traps sunlight. They can actually fall on other plants and the acidity changes and the other plants won't survive.
Yeah, if you go to a pine forest, I don't know if anybody has experience, nothing grows amongst those needles other than pine trees.
That's right.
Pine tree saplings. So yeah, it's quite interesting. In a mixed forest, it's a quite different picture. And leaf forests, of course, again, different. But you're right, Dave. Now, what's interesting though, and this is something that you just touched on, is the nature of these fires is changing. Also, it seems, at least, right? They seem to be more violent. What we saw in Australia in 2019, our fire season, was unprecedented. We had a fire front that was up to 30 kilometers in front of the actual fire. What that means is, every fire produces sparks that go high into the air, that they're drifting forward, igniting fires in front of the actual fire front. And in Australia, we had that happening 30 kilometers ahead.
Yeah, we call it's an ember storm.
It's unbelievable.
And the partially burnt leaves are still glowing red. Yeah. Not on fire in the air, but they're glowing red and totally dry. They've been incinerated, but they're still glowing. And they float in the hot air mass and then rain out of that, not usually so far away. But 30 k's is a long distance for it to go.
And there's not much you can do. Like in the old days, you could predict those fires. And then Dave is right as well about the canopy fire. If you had a canopy fire, you could just stay low. If you stayed low and moved against the fire front, or through it or under it if you could, then you would be okay, right?
Yeah.
That may no longer be the case. Do you remember the fire that we had 2 or 3 years ago in Greece? It was in a town in Greece where it looked like a huge laser had just melted everything.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the heat that had to be generated there must have must have been tremendous. And
Yeah.
it literally melted everything. It was just astounding.
Yeah, so the thing that I find still truly, it's not awe-inspiring, but it shows the relative heat, and that's the aluminium wheels that cars have totally melt and pull away from the vehicle downhill as molten aluminium.
Interestingly, I know this is way off topic, but that's what happened in the Twin Towers.
Yeah,
There were pools of molten steel
in the basement.
Aggregating in the basement. Now, let's be clear here, right? I had to bring it up since you just triggered my memory. We were told that the jet fuel caused fire inside the buildings. We know what jet fuel burns at, the temperature. And we also know what steel is required to melt it. I mean, the temperature is required, right? But they said, no, the steel didn't melt. The steel was just heated to a point where it buckled. Okay, I can buy that. I actually, all things aside, fair enough. I get it. It can happen. Maybe not as catastrophically a collapse as we saw, but I understand it. It's never happened before. It never happened since. But let's just say it did then, and the steel buckled. But that's not what happened. Some of the steel girders were cut, and you could see that there are pictures of debris where you can see these massive steel, 4x4s, whatever they are, massive, right? They were cut with fine precision. You can see it on a downward sliding angle, right? Fairly acute angle, fairly acute. And you have the pooling metal from the steel trusses as well, and the steel girders that were pooling at the bottom. So it got hot. But the jet fuel was not enough to generate these furnace-like conditions, and it certainly didn't burn long enough either for the steel. If you think about it for a second, right? It didn't actually, between the collapse, and the actual attack, not much time passed. But of course, now we've got other problems. Nobody talks about 9/11 anymore. We've got many other problems, and all of those things have now just been accepted as, well, that's what happened. Live with it.
Do you know, Meki, I saw Michio Kaku talking about the UFO whistleblower today on the news. It takes a couple of days. I got my friend was going, they're talking about it on mainstream. I go, yeah, they are. And he goes, wow, finally. And I go, well, it's kind of what happens, right? If you've got your ear to the ground and you see a story beginning to develop, you hope it goes to mainstream. It doesn't always. But when it does, they've got to do all of their verifications and everything and be sure that what they're saying is real before it gets to air. And it can take a couple of days. And he's like, yeah, like they're talking about. And so this is the same friend who alerted me to it. Right? I saw it. It came up my feeds and things. But once again, you just have to understand, and this is one of the questions that no one's talking about. I'm only going to repeat it for a minute. The U.S. Defense Department permitted this fellow to talk about it. You can call it UFO whistleblower all you like. That's sensationalism, in my, as far as I'm concerned, because
it's not a whistleblower if he's allowed to do it.
They permitted him to do it. In fact, they vetted everything he was going to say. In fact, they probably trained him to say everything he's saying.
That's right.
So,
exactly.
How do you think about it now?
See, Dave makes a very good point. And this is not just about the UFO. Oh, by the way, I know now who came up with the term UAP. He was a guest on the Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah.
Really?
Watch the last episode if you get a chance. Yeah. He said, actually, when I was working for the government, I coined the term, and he said on air, I did that to get away from the heavily, or from the let's call it the heavily burdened term UFO, right? Because it comes with a lot of baggage, essentially, is what he said. So we needed something else, and he came up with the term UAP. And the Skinwalker people were quite taken aback, like, oh, you came up with that, did you? Okay, right. he was also part of the Bigelow team. Okay, and then he worked together with one of the chief scientists on the current team for the Pentagon. Looking into the UFO Europe. Anyway, it's what a wicked weave. What a wicked web we weave for ourselves. No, but look, the thing is this, though, right? I mean, misinformation. This is my point, really, has always been part of the game, and not just in the UFO UAP thing, but in any kind of strange phenomena. Whenever somebody wanted to talk about conspiracy theories and such, what you do is you release a little bit of truth. And then you discredit a whole bunch of people if they go too far. You give false information or whatever. And now we've got this gentleman here whom I actually don't know anything about, to be honest.
No, he's just come out of the woodwork.
Yeah, and he says, "Oh, this is true and that is true." I mean, people have been saying this for a long, long time. That this is true and that is. I mean, it's not new information. I mean, but the thing is that he all of a sudden he says, "Oh no, but it's true." Well, that's what the people before you said, buddy. So I don't know why. Well, I don't even know why this is making a splash at all, because people that have worked in the industry, right, and they come to us, various eyewitness people that were at Groom Lake facility, others as well at the Skunk Works, they say, yeah, this is what happened, this is true, and this is true, and nobody believed them, and now we are going to believe this guy when he reads off the song sheet written by, the government, really. If you think about it.
That's the point here, right? So I'm showing another clip here, and for the YouTube audience, and it's Bob Lazar describes alien technology, and it's clearly from the early '80s.
Yeah,
right. The thin ties, the hair.
You can't fake that.
You can't fake it. Right? And he spoke about all of this. The only thing that's different is the terminology.
Yeah, of course.
And for him, apparently he wasn't meant to say anything, and it was a really big slip for that to come out.
Yeah. If you want to talk about whistleblowers and what happens to them, you just look at Julian Assange. Okay, he wasn't the whistleblower. He's the guy that published it, and now they got him for espionage and treason, etc. I mean, the thing is, he's not an American, so he can't really commit treason. Because I can't be a traitor to a country I don't belong to, really.
No, that's a good point.
I'm just a spy. I mean, you can hang me for espionage, cool, but I'm not actually a traitor because I was never part of your group.
Yeah.
The whole point of treason is that I'm part of your group, and then I go to Bob because I like Bob better, and now I'm a traitor. So to be clear, Julian Assange is not a traitor. Yeah, espionage you can it's a stretch, but you can say that if you wanted to. But ultimately, whistleblowers are not met with kind words and media attention normally, right? And they certainly don't get a script. It's not a whistleblower if they get a script. And if this person doesn't, I don't know, get arrested or put into jail or is discredited, then we know that he's probably working for the government. Okay, so that's where we are with that. Again, Dave, remember how we've told everybody, just remember, everything you see in any kind of media thing, be it a paper or a book, a screen, it doesn't really matter. Someone put there for you to see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, what is that one? Go on.
That's the image of the alien that you have never seen before or since in the media. And I'm going to also paste that for the friendly folk who are in the chat room.
Cool.
That is what I drew in primary school. And my parents were called in because I was scaring the other kids.
Well, it's an odd looking.
It is, and they were like snail eyes.
Right, gotcha.
Right, so where the eyes were, but they came out all four sides of the alien's head.
See, that's much better design than us. Much better design.
Well, you can see everywhere, right? It's probably
the whole point.
Good against predators.
If you got a 360 overlay, that's phenomenal.
I know.
Yeah, but look, the thing is that the craziness doesn't end there, right? There's a very interesting thing that just happened just the other day, for the first time documented. A crocodile gave birth to its own child. No, hang on, let me rephrase that.
Yeah. A bird has done that recently too.
Yeah, I know, but this is the first time ever. So other, birds and fish and reptiles, but never a crocodile. This is the biggest animal that has ever given birth to a fetus where no male was involved. So this female crocodile gave birth to a fetus that she herself produced, and it's actually 99.9% genetically identical to herself. So essentially, she gave birth to her clone.
And the other 1% is like random mutation or something, right?
Of course,
right.
Yeah. But think about that for a second. Now, we always wondered, right? I mean, what happens if these extinction level events happen, ELEs, right? How do you sustain? Maybe all the males get killed or whatever, right? And or all the females. But it seems that some
will it to happen.
Well, some species can change sex.
That's right.
And maybe all species can change sex. And clearly some species can give birth to their clones. I think that's a phenomenal insight.
Joseph, I think Mary might have been telling the truth now.
That's how about so she wasn't a harlot. No, but yeah, look, this is the thing though.
I always believed that was alien insemination. That's what I believed. My whole life.
That's what I always thought it was, even when I was a very young child, because I started reading Berlitz when I was like 8. Right? And I had pretty much left all the school wisdom behind. I remember very clearly there was an upward road that represented history and civilization, and an ever rising road. Not circular, not ups and downs, ever rising. That's how, when I was a child, history was consumed by the children in school. No, we're getting better every year. Everything is getting better and faster and taller. So that's an interesting kind of thing, I think. And we also have seen now a fairly significant increase in the people running for president in the United States.
Oh, what have we got now?
Well, we got Mr. Pence. He's also
really?
Yes.
People aren't patriotic enough, and I've got to get that. I've got to rally the troops. Good question.
Buddy. There's a couple of things I'd like to mention, and one thing I'd like to mention is it's got nothing to do with conspiracy. It's got nothing to do with anything. What it has to do with is my somewhat restored faith in humanity, and even our legal process to some extent here in Australia. There's a lady who some 20 years ago was accused of having murdered her 4 young children in their sleep, or before they even turned 1. And no, not all at once, but whenever she gave birth, they lived for a year, 9 months, 7 months, whatever, and then they were found dead. So this happened over a period of time, and then after a while, people were suspicious, and she was charged with it, and her diary was taken into as evidence into the courtroom, and it said there, the guilt is killing me. Now, look, I've had some unpleasant experiences in my life, right? And sometimes things go wrong in your life, and you feel guilty. It's not your fault, but you can't help. So let me give you an example. If my daughter gets sick, or my son gets sick, or my other daughter hurts herself in any way, well, it's not my fault. I didn't do it, but I feel guilty, and I feel that I'm responsible and I should have done about it. Now that's what she wrote in her diary. As any parent would say, I feel guilty. I mean, maybe I could have done something else. Or, she didn't say that, but she just said, I have this terrible guilt, which as a parent, I completely understand.
Yeah.
But it was interpreted in such a way as an admission of guilt. In fact, that was the single biggest. In the 4 deaths and the diary entry. Now, what has happened though in the meantime? Now, bear in mind, she's been in jail for over 20 years. Okay, science marched on, and she has supporters, mainly her friends, not so much her family, and her supporters always tried to get her case reopened. So finally, they submitted the genetic evidence of the children to new tests. And 20 years is a long time in genetic sciences, and they found that both the male children and the female children, so that they suffered from the same thing. The male children suffered from the same thing, and the female children suffered from the same thing. It's a genetic, I guess, condition in the girls. I think there was something akin to epilepsy or something like that, and something similar again in the boys. Not the same, but something similar in the boys. And both of those conditions have been linked to early crib or childhood death. And on the basis of that, she has been acquitted and freed.
Right.
So I just wanted to mention that that's actually something where you think, well, 20 years, I mean, it's a long time, but people didn't give up on her. So that's the restoration of faith in humanity that I have. And secondly, the system actually allowed for it to happen, which goes, some way, not all the way, but some way towards restoring my faith into the judicial system in Australia, which I think is pretty broken, but at least things like this can happen. So, I just wanted to mention it because it's such an interesting story. And it's also a story that tells us the most important thing of all, to not lose hope. Never lose hope.
Yeah,
right?
20 years is a long time to not lose hope. That's
it is.
But she had someone on the outside fighting for her, and
Yes.
a team of people,
Yes.
and it's determined now to be a medical condition, and that's why she was released. But she has cause now to sue, and for wrongful incarceration, I suspect, or something equivalent. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
And there's one thing which sort of came on the hill of the D-Day celebrations, I guess. And I think for me this is a humorous item, Dave.
What is it?
Mention it. Australia is now going to ban nationally any kind of Nazi symbols.
Oh, that's right.
It's been almost 80 years since the end of World War II, and we've been happy displaying, or not happily displaying, but certainly people have been collecting, displaying Nazi symbols or whatever without any repercussions anywhere but in Germany, where it's always been a crime.
Mm-hmm.
But really, 80 years, and now you think it's a good idea to stop it? I'm sorry, but I don't see it. I mean, what are we saying, that the neo-Nazis are such a danger now, and it's such a movement with such a potential for disruption that we must ban it 80 years after the fact? Is that what's happened? Maybe that is what's happening. I don't know. I just think it's a little humorous.
Yeah, totally agree.
It's just crazy. But again, be aware of the news stories that you're being fed. Okay? What I suggest, the best thing you can do. Now, I know it's hard and it's expensive, but try to travel. Try to get out of your own headspace. Try to go to other countries and see for yourself what is going on. Talk to people. Anthony Bourdain said that. Just go into a bar at 2 p.m. Order a drink. Talk to someone you would never talk to. See what they have to say. Right? Order the butter sauce. I said that too. Order the butter sauce. Because I think we started to live in our own heads too much. We're looking for confirmation bias. We don't really go out anymore. And I've had a lot of conversations now in recent times, where I sit there with parents picking up kids and from sporting activities and other things. It's really hard to have conversations for me. But I'm an introvert. Well, I'm a trained introvert, so I trained myself to be a bit more gregarious. But I tell you, Dave, nobody is talking about anything of any import. I know it's small talk, but even things I overhear, right? Nobody's discussing any of the things we talk about ever.
No, that's right.
On this show or on any of the shows, really. It's as though these are all non-topics.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, why talk about it? What are you talking about? Why? What's the point? Don't talk about it. Right? It's just, it's just nuts. Nobody wants to talk about. Maybe they don't know there is something to talk about. I don't know. Yeah, actually, who's Memes? Memes just put something in the chat on the Canadian wildfires. Look, similar to you, Memes. We also found that our forest management is dreadful, or was dreadful. We're now looking at getting the native, agenda, or the native knowledge to help us manage the forests. I assume then what you're saying is that Canada is similarly mismanaging its forests, which leaves, I guess, forests ready to burn up. So
yeah.
And money grabbing, land grabbing.
That's right.
Yeah,
and that would be very similar to what we experienced.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, I think you mentioned it, Dave. The fires happened where they wanted to build a high-speed train or something.
That's right.
Is that right? Yes.
Yeah. So alleged.
Yeah.
It just happened to coincide with the path of the train.
Oh.
Now, I'm not saying anyone's responsible for it. It's probably just, a correlation. And I don't believe anyone, it's surreptitiously set on fire so they could get it approved. No, I'm not saying any of that. It just seemed to match the path. Now, that's also the path of forests, but it gets a bit thin, right? So, the jury's out. Who knows? Because I wouldn't like to accuse anyone of anything, Becky. I'm just going to say that. I'm a commentator. That's what I do. I commentate. So if I see a play on the field, I'll suppose, make a supposition. I'll suggest the reason for it. Not saying that I know, and I'm certainly not blaming anyone.
Oh, no. Look, I go further, though, because I will give you my opinion. And because, look, to be frank, if you're listening to the station, you probably know a lot more than the average person, right? Because something got you here, and you might like some of the content. Well, I don't agree with all the content on the station. I'm quite honest about that. But that's okay. I don't have to, because it's you, the listener, that needs to decide what content, what information you want to believe. But I will give you an opinion. Right, these things that we're seeing happen more and more frequently. Be it wildfires, heat waves, which are connected, of course, severe weather events, whatever they are, right? Severe flooding events, landslides, with a lot more casualties than before. Not each individual event, mind you, but the amalgamation. There's just a lot more of it now than there used to be. Of course, there used to be bad floods. There used to be bad fires, right? Yes. But never have to been clustered together so many at the same time, over such over the entire world. In fact, these events are on the increase. And we're seeing island nations now looking for answers. Well, when my island goes, where do I go?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, right? I mean, hello, because it might sooner rather than later. And it's not the North Polar ice we worry about, because that's already in the water mostly. We don't care about that. We care about the glaciers because they're on land, and we care about all the ice in the Antarctic. That's what we care about. Because when you add that to the oceans, that's a significant differential. And it's not like it hasn't happened before. So people, sea levels can't rise, blah, blah, blah. So let's be very clear. But 14,000 years ago, thereabouts, at the end of the last ice age, always ask yourself what brought about that end. We touched on it. Sea levels rose 100 meters.
Mm-hmm.
Go into your city, wherever you live, and look for a building that's 100 meters tall. Won't be very many.
That's the truth.
If you're in Shanghai, or Dubai, sure enough, but elsewhere, there won't be too many. that are taller than. If you're living on the coast, okay, unless it's 100 meters tall, that would have been gone. Now, there's not enough ice left to increase water levels by 100 meters. I think the most we can expect, well, hopefully not, but it's about 30 meters. Now, 30 meters, again, I'm in Sydney, right? So I go to Sydney. Sydney is is literally a harbour city. And you can see the water. There it is, right? Now, if that were to rise 30 meters or 10 meters or 5 meters, that's the end of Sydney, right?
I've estimated, Mickey, it's only between 2.5 and 3 meters that pretty much society is gone.
Yeah,
because food, transport, services like sewage, it's all gone.
Yeah,
it's all gone.
Yeah. See, this is look. You just raised a very important point here. So just beginning of this week, there's this dam that was destroyed by whoever. They're all pointing at each other, right?
Of course they are.
In Ukraine, sorry, it was actually providing water for a fairly large
Crimea.
chunk. Yeah, all of Crimea, in fact.
And also the power station, nuclear power station.
Oh, completely. Yeah. The cooling. They've got a big cooling pond there, which will last
needs a bit of water.
If they don't get something happening in 3 months, then anyway. But it's the largest nuclear power plant in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Eastern Europe is the definition.
Yeah, just so we're on the same page. But it's the sewage that you have to worry about. In any flooding event. Yeah, sure, the flooding is a problem. Livestock loss, property loss, a loss of life due to drowning, other things. All of these things are terrible. But what people forget, and we've just been reminded again and again here in Australia recently and elsewhere, it's the sewer. Because when it floods, the sewer just becomes whatever you stand in. You see, all the sewer stuff bubbles up because it just now has become part of your waterways. And if you drink that water, you will probably die, right? Or get very, very sick. Right? That's why the most important thing for any flood situation is the deliver of fresh water.
That's right.
Because you can't drink that water. You cannot drink that water. But even worse, apparently, I listened to this expert, let's call him. He's a professor for something or water, something or at university, and he said, because he studied that area, what he says is, look, yes, the sewer is bad, this is bad, but what's really, really bad, he said, is all the chemical factories that are there, and having those chemicals get into the water supply.
Oh yeah,
that's what he says is the real issue. And again, it's the things that we least expect that knock us over the head. I can tell you that. We are just walking blindly into the wall. So yeah, it's not a problem. So, yeah, we're fine. Keep going. Okay? It's all good. Just walk.
Yeah, just walk. Why aren't you still walking? I can only imagine, Mackie, the zombie-like trance that the people who have got seaside properties, or in Sydney, if it was 3 meters above sea level, the Nepean River backs up to the Blue Mountains because there isn't 3 meters of fall. Believe it or not.
Is that right?
You know, Parramatta River does the same thing. So, so Penrith floods from that end as well. There's just some really crazy things that happen with that much water rise, besides the regular things that we all, the beachside properties. No, think about all those rivers that go down to the ocean. Mackie, in America, there's been news stories in the last 2 weeks. I didn't want to bring them up because there was no segue to them, right? And they're not that extreme, but they're saying New York is sinking.
Yes.
That's really interesting. And it's sinking in 1 millimeter a year. Hang on, isn't that pretty much what the sea level rise was? Let's not call sea level rise. Let's just call it sinking. because they said a number of the cities on the East Coast are all sinking too at the same rate. What an extraordinary thing. In Australia, we've got the same level of not sinking, but sea level rise here. And I have gone back 150 years with our measurements, and you can see that it's happening. Because at one time, Mickey, they were saying the Opera House was sinking. And they needed to do reparations, stop it. Let's try and work out a way to stop it. And then only went to have the oh my moment. Oh, actually, no, it's the sea level. Because there's a little step on the eastern side of the harbour that they called the Queen's Step. And it was designed, that step, like that little platform along a very long staircase, little step. It was there so that the Queen could hop off her boat and then step onto dry land from the boat and then walk into the back door of the Opera House to go see something special.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer exposed to air. And people go, oh, no, it's sinking. Look at that.
Yeah, it's sank.
Yeah. I like the people who take a photo of the beach at whatever tide and go, that's the way it was when I was a kid. You're right. There's tides.
We're not talking about so okay, just on that, since you brought it up. Yes. But where is that beach now? How much further inland has it come? So, because I know I do a lot of beach walks with my buddies or cycles, and down in Wollongong, right? And it's not a protected beach, like it's exposed to the ocean, right? But there are very large boulders visible now. And I said to my friend who lives there, I don't remember these large boulders. Have they been put here to stop beach erosion or whatever it is? No. He said, this is beach erosion. These boulders have always been here, but they're always covered by sand.
Yeah.
That sand is now eroded. And then I look from those boulders across a sort of a grassy embankment, to a whole bunch of houses. And I said, those houses are going to go, aren't they? And they're sort of, on a precipice there.
Mm-hmm.
And my buddy goes, yeah, they're going to go. Those houses are going to go eventually. and it's quite significant because I remember the beach. Like, oh, what a beautiful beach. And now there's still sand there, but there are massive boulders visible as well. So the erosion is a thing. And we have lost houses and we are losing beaches to this erosion. It's a natural process anyway, right? But it has not been that swift, I want to call it, in the past. Now you can almost watch it happen as you stand there. Right? And
yeah, look, there's a lake that opens to the ocean, and it's a tidal lake up at the entrance near me, and the people's homes photographed many different times back in black and white photography days, like the 40s through 50s. And the water was... The land is very, very flat. It has a very slight incline. And it never got to the back fences of these people's houses. Now it's at the back fence of these people's houses. With no significant rainfall. It wasn't, being blocked going back out to the ocean. It was just... That's just the tide now. And it all makes sense. You can't say that every place on the planet is subsiding. You just can't.
No.
Which is crazy, right?
That there are a few. I mean, it's not just the eastern seaboard in the States, right? Mm-hmm. But so the sinking cities in the world, or the ones that are sinking the most, are London, Jakarta to the point where they're moving that city. That's the Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, which is home to 10 million people. It's one of the fastest sinking cities in the world, right? They're moving that to another location. So taking the city, I guess, somehow, and moving it to another location.
That's so nice.
Isn't it though, right?
Yeah.
And there are others. I mean, so Jakarta is the one that sinks the fastest. Ho Chi Minh City. Okay, so Jakarta is sinking to the tune of 2,000 millimeters. 2,000 millimeters. That's 2 meters a year. Sorry. In the last 100 years, it has sunk 2, and the average or the mean subsidence is about 100 millimeters per year, which is of course 10 centimeters.
That's right.
10 centimeters a year. Ho Chi Minh City.
Yep.
Bangkok, New Orleans, Tokyo. Those are the ones that are sinking the most.
The ones that are closest to the equator where the bulge is, I said this before, say it again, the bulge gets bigger, and then measuring back on the middle of the bell curve, if so, you turn it sideways, cross-section it, there's less and less change towards the bottom of the bell curve on the outsides. So Tasmania doesn't, which is right down low, it doesn't change as much as the equatorial regions, right? And so, it's only rising this much there. They could even barely tell. You're right, they could barely tell. Go to a tidal, a place up in northern Queensland that has an 8-meter tide, and they know all about it because they've added like a meter to it. They know. And so just remember, take the whole thing across all of it, measure it, know it, study it if you wish, but don't debunk it because you're not the smartest person in the room.
No, look, it's happening. Now, the interesting thing is this, and there's some really stark figures here, right? So I want to give you just a couple of numbers because I like numbers. The people or the population that's exposed to these sea level changes comes to roughly, so Kolkata, Mumbai, Dakar, Guangzhou, Ho Chi Minh City, Shanghai, Bangkok, Yangon, Miami, and Haiphong, we're looking at roughly 60 million people.
Wow.
Okay, sorry, I lied to you, about 70 million people that are exposed there. Now, cities that lie in fairly low coastal plains, like similar to Sydney, that are at risk, are Tokyo, Shanghai, Cairo, Buenos Aires, Tianjin, London, Jakarta, Bangkok, again, Ho Chi Minh City, Houston, and St. Petersburg. Now, that comes to roughly 120 million people.
Wow.
That's a lot of
people.
Right? That's a lot of people. What?
I realized the currency was people then, so I just repeated it.
No,
you're right. But remember, what we're talking about here, Mackie, is the climate refugees.
Yes, 100%. 100%. Now think about that for a second. Let's say half. 50 million people on the move. 50 million. That's the population. That's twice the population of Australia. Okay, it used to be the population of Western Germany at some point. It's now Germany is now 80 million, I think. But that's a lot of people, and there'll be knock-on effects. So once 50 million people get moving, there'll be other people that move as well because they want to get out of the way of those people moving, right? That's just what happens. So what do? This is not going to be fun, guys. We're laughing here, but this is pretty serious.
I posted a thing today, Mackie, which was part of a Senate hearing in the US about if, let's pretend that half of all of the motor industry new sales was, EVs. And then the guy goes, let's make it 60%. Right. If all of those were converted, what's the difference to the carbon emissions by 2100? And it was 0.0005 or something percent. Remember my example about how poorly this is being governed from an emissions perspective? It's all on the end user, and we have so little input as private vehicles towards the total emissions that they ignore mining, power production, and farming as the top three in our respective countries. And if you only leave it up to the consumer, the private consumer of motor vehicles, to change their EVs, it doesn't affect the temperature at all, not even at all. So all of those righteous people driving around these EVs, and they also made the point of if 60% of all current vehicles overnight turned into EVs, can the power grid handle it? And the answer was no. This was in the US State Senate inquiry on it.
Yeah.
No, they can't. I love the example of this guy talking about his friend. He has large semi-trailers, large trucks, B-doubles, and he said he wanted to establish the first electric truck fleet with power and charging and do all this stuff. And when he applied to the local government area that he lived in, they said that's more draw than the entire city.
Wow.
For the vehicles that would be required to be charging there in one place. There isn't enough power in the city to do it, just for one guy and 50 trucks.
Think about that for a second.
I'm
Holy
going to hand it back to you because we got 1 minute.
No, but that's a phenomenal piece of information. I mean,
yeah, it was 2.3 megawatts or something. It was more than the city draws.
Yeah, but that means, of course, that an electric future is completely unsustainable.
It is not possible. Yeah.
I mean, what? Unless we all, get really super efficient solar panels on our cars, that would be something. But that's really quite. That's actually horrendous, Dave. That's terrible. And still, we're being shilled to buy these things. Buy the electric car. Do something for the environment. Buy the electric car. Do it. Just do it now. Do it. Come on. Do it.
I do think it's to support Elon Musk getting us all to Mars, or at least getting the rich people to Mars. There's the music, I think.
Oh, so it is. Thank you so much for inviting us into your home. This has been Plato's Cave. Thank you so much for listening once again. Don't go away. Something will come up. Something good, I'm sure. But most of all, be safe.